Welcome to the Bitchin' Siblings Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bitching Siblings Podcast. I'm Ginny.
And I'm Amy.
Tonight's topic is best, worst, funniest jobs we've had, stories that we have from work, all that kind of fun stuff. And again, to recap, Amy and I have at times worked at the same place. Not same location, but same company.
And funny thing here too, Chris and I have worked at the same place.
And at the same place and same company.
And same location during the same time frame.
Yes. Yes.
And people would actually, like our coworkers would call me Little Chris.
So Amy,
which I'm not sure. Hold on, I'm not sure if that's a dig at me or him. Does he look feminine or do I look masculine?
I don't know that it's the way you look. I think you guys do have a lot of the same personality traits.
Maybe.
You know, I don't know that it's a visual thing as much as just the way that you guys behave, your idiosyncrasies, all that kind of stuff.
And when Chris and I worked together, we also lived together.
Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 So
what were you going to say?
I was going to say, do you have like a worst job?
Yes. For about a year, I worked for I don't know if I should say it.
Don't say the name.
Who it was. Okay. I worked in a warehouse, and it wasn't the company itself that I hated. It was the job. It was very mindless. And my brain started to feel like it was melting. Like I never was able to use my brain. It was literally
busy work.
Like the computer, it really was. The computer system in the warehouse told you exactly what to do, when to do it, where to put things, Yeah. You couldn't be a creative problem solver, and I hated that. So I got a job where I could use my brain.
Do you have a favorite job?
Yes and no. So I loved my very first job. I worked at a veterinary hospital, and at that time that I was planning on becoming a veterinarian. It was tough emotionally, but I loved that job. Like I loved working with the animals. What about you? Best and worst.
Worst job? I don't know that it was the job itself. It was the people. It was the hostess at a Chinese restaurant.
I remember that one.
In my hometown. And it was my first job outside of babysitting. And I was like 17 when I got my first job because my mom for, I want to say about 7 or 8 years, had an in-home daycare when my little sister was not in school so that she could stay home with my little sister. And so I had like a built-in clientele for babysitting. So a lot of the parents, because I worked at my mom's daycare, so a lot of the parents would ask me to babysit. So not only was I helping in the daycare and getting paid, but then I was also getting babysitting jobs on the side. So this was my first job out of the house, and I just remember they yelled at me a lot, and I never knew why they were yelling at me. Like, I never really understood what I was doing wrong, and I just remember being, like, very confused. Like, I understand if I'm messing something up, like, by all means, like, but, like, I could never get what I was doing wrong or what I could fix to be different. It was just... it just wasn't a good fit. I am not somebody that can be yelled at. If I'm doing something wrong, constructive criticism, yes, tell me. But like yelling at me, like I shut down. And maybe they were telling me what I needed to do. But because they were yelling at me, like I just emotionally was like, whoa, walls went up. And so it's difficult to work past that, Yeah. So that was like my worst job. And like, that's not even like a bad job. It was literally just the way that the people who owned it chose to go about communicating things. The job itself wasn't bad. It was a hostessing job, at a more use at. And it was I don't want to say Chinese restaurant like high end, but it wasn't like fast food. It was a more higher end. I mean, this is the place where you would take your dates before homecoming or before prom or whatever. It was a nice upper scale Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
So they just had high expectations. They were nice people, like if you got them outside of work, but at work they just had incredibly high expectations, and apparently I was just not meeting those, which is fine. Some people just aren't a good fit.
Yeah. What about your best?
I want to say my best job was when I worked at Hollywood Video, and I say that because I had the most fun when I worked there because I was a teenager, zero fucks given. It was just a great time. I was working to have spending money and not working to pay bills.
Yeah.
Not that I don't enjoy my job now, for anybody who's listening. I love my job. I love the people I work with, but it's, it's a grown-up
I'd
job.
also like to add that disclaimer to mine as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a grown-up job. So it's just,
it's grown-up expectations.
yeah, and I enjoy my job. Don't get me wrong. It is a problem solving on a day-to-day basis. Nothing's ever exactly the same. It challenges me, but there's not as much opportunity for fun. And by fun, I mean one of my best stories of working at Hollywood Video, and I can say it now because the company's defunct. In the same parking lot, we had like a Subway TCBY mixed restaurant. We would take, when they were done with their whipped cream, they had like the canisters, the compressed air canisters.
Mm-hmm.
And they would give them to us, and we would chase each other around after closing and try to spray each other with like this. There's not a lot of whipped cream left in it, because it's the end of it, but it's still compressed air, so it would get all over the place. And we would just chase each other around and hide in places and like jump scare each other. Again, disclaimer, all after closing hours. This is not while people were in the store. But again, the company's defunct, so what are they going to do? But we just had so much fun, and it was a big store. That one was a big store. There was a couple of Hollywood Videos that were smaller. This one was huge.
It was a decent size. Yeah,
It was, yeah.
that was the one I started in too.
So we had fun. That was my favorite job, just because it was a blast. And like I said, we were just making money to like, do shit and have fun, not to pay bills, and there was no responsibility. I mean, I was a shift lead, so like I made more. I was in charge, but we still had fun. There's just something to be said about having those high school jobs.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you if you had any other fun memories of times on the job.
Oh yeah. Like, I met my ex-husband while I was working at Hollywood Video. Wouldn't change it for the world, obviously, because I have two beautiful boys. But I think that's part of the reason why I hold that place in like such high regard, is because like a lot of my formative years and the things that we did, you and I used to play around. I know that we used to like run around that like Albertsons or Rite Aid or whatever it was that was in the parking lot of the Sammamish store on breaks and stuff. And it's just, I don't know. We used to just do so much stupid, fun crap. And some of my best memories, like when we went to the ocean, was during that time. And like just that whole time in our life was just so carefree that it's like, I don't even know if it was the job. It was just that moment in time.
Yeah, I definitely can get that.
Is that like one of your favorites?
Yeah. Because around that time is when I transitioned from the veterinary hospital that I worked at to working at Hollywood. So that, I mean, it would make sense that would be more of the time frame.
It was a blast. I think like, that was when, you're discovering who you are. And, I made decent money at the time for doing what I did. And, I got to stay up late and then watch free movies. And
I always enjoyed the nights that we had inventory. So at the Gig Harbor store specifically, I don't remember the Redmond store, but when we had inventory in Gig Harbor, the assistant manager at that time, we would try to come up with, if these movies were pornos, what would their names be? And around that time, Black Hawk Down came out, and you can, I'm sure, figure out what we called that one. But yeah, like it just stupid shit, just really stupid shit.
I mean, I've had some really good jobs, and I've got some really great stories from a lot of them. The job I'm at now, I absolutely adore. But back when there's only 2.5 of us in our department, and I say half because we have somebody we're training now, and she really only, once she's fully trained, is only going to be in our department like 1 or 2 days a week, and is kind of relief for when one of us goes on vacation. But at one point, this department was like 10 people, and slowly our job has been streamlined. So there's a lot less busy work. So there's just not the need for 10 people. But back when it was still pretty full, I have a video on my phone somewhere of like where they were doing chair races up and down the aisle. like with our chairs, like they were like scooting on their chairs, like, and it's just little things like that. And like we have a saying, there's no crying in sales audit. We don't, it's a joke because there have been times in the past where we've had to cry because sometimes things are overwhelming and stressful. And at one point, the department I worked for the current company I'm with, was a 7-day-a-week department. So, we worked every day. I mean, obviously we had days off, but there was never a day that we were closed. And we're kind of the first team that a lot of things come into. So, I work for a retail company, and at the end of the day, things come in and we go through and clean it up and then send it off to its respective places, inventory, loss prevention, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the stuff comes to us first. And that is overwhelming sometimes when it's a weekend and there's other teams that aren't in. And so having to reach out to on-call people, and it can be stressful. And it used to be that, you didn't leave till the day was done. And, sometimes during the holiday season, you were working 10, 11, 12-hour days sitting in front of a computer trying to balance out registers. And, it was stressful, but we try to have fun. Like, we just try to make it, like, that's why we say no crying in sales audit and all that kind of stuff. Just because sometimes you just gotta, we have internal, like, we have Lyle, who's our squirrel, because we're all, like, Doug on up. Squirrel. His name is Lyle. And it's like a little Christmas tree ornament that's in the shape of a squirrel.
Okay.
And he moves from desk to desk based on who's riding the struggle bus for the day. So
that's kind of cool.
Squirrels are distracting. Squirrel, so like this, if you're struggling, Lyle will end up on your desk.
I like that. That's kind of cute.
And then we do call it the struggle bus. Now, not so much anymore. Again, like I said, this is back when there was much more people and we were given a new system. We had to learn with very little insight and very little training. So there was a lot of struggle bus days. Not so much anymore, thank God. But
yeah,
if I could be a stay-at-home mom and cook and clean all day and make the house perfect and have all the, during COVID, when we were furloughed for 6 weeks, I had a blast. I stayed home. I got up. My husband loved it because I usually am in bed by like 8:30, 9, passed out by 9:30. But during COVID and furlough, I stayed up later, so we had more time together, but I could sleep in a little bit. We'd still get up. The kids would do schoolwork on their laptops or whatever, but I would do the dishes, and then I would cook, and I would bake, and the house was clean, and dinner was always ready when my husband got home. And like, he's like, "Oh, I could get used to this." And I'm like, "Well, I have all not all day, but like I had time where I had time for myself. I could read a book, I could sit outside, I could do some gardening, I could do all those things, but I still had time to cook dinner, and I still had time to help with school, and I didn't feel stressed. And then when my husband came home, I had time to be a wife because I had time during the day to be me. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally get
Do you have
that.
any fun stories about you at any of your jobs?
Yeah, so at my first job, and most of my fun stories are there. We were, at the time, we were closed on Sundays. But someone still had to go in and feed and water and walk the dogs and stuff. So I went in on a weekend, and I was standing in front of all the kennels and looking at, okay, who's got to get fed first, like planning out my mapping out my feeding and walking and stuff. And this cat who was there for some reason or another, he wasn't boarding, he was actually sick. Projectile vomited straight on me. Projectile. And I'm like, cool. This is, cool, great. And then, of course, I had to walk dogs, and these dogs are like smelling me like they want to eat this vomit that's on me. And I'm like, no, we're not eating vomit today. That's not part of the day. And then there was a couple dogs that we had that were regular boarders. And one was this massive, massive Rottweiler. He was the biggest Rottweiler I have ever seen. And he had random hairs all over him that were like super, super long. Super long. And his name was Max.
Aww.
And so someone got me a little stuffed, like almost like a Beanie Baby Rottie that stayed in the car. Like that was my car pet, and I named that little guy Max because I loved that
Aw.
dog. Like, yeah, he was so sweet. And then there was another dog. It was a purebred border collie named Armani.
That's a good name.
I know, right? And he was like it was a very weird color for a border collie because he was like a light, like a yellow
Mm-hmm.
instead of a black, like a tricolor or anything. That dog, you'd go to take him out to go to the bathroom, go take him for a walk, but before you even got out the door, like you'd barely get him out of his kennel and he'd already be peeing on the floor. And I'm like, really? Cool. Like, looking back, I would take those days any day over some of the other hard times I've had in some jobs. But
Yeah.
like, there were just so many dogs that were like very memorable. Very memorable. And then there was a boxer named Joy. Furthest thing from a joy. That dog, you had to walk on a rabies lead because it would bite you.
Oh, that sucks.
That was like you'd have to put the rabies lead in there and like put it on the dog, and then you could open the kennel and let the dog out. But I'd still take that any day over some of the bullshit with dealing with people.
I've worked in retail almost my whole life, so we deal with cranky people all the time. So you got to do what you got to do to keep your days entertaining and fun so you don't fucking totally lose it. One of the last places I worked prior to where I work now, it was a big it's a big company, it's a big building. And we were in the clearance section and we were redoing the clearance section, and one of the girls had hid, like similar to like what's going on here with these clothes, like had hid, but like it was a 2-level clearance thing, so like shirts and shirts, so like it's not like it was where you could see the bottom, they were right on top of each other, and one of the girls hid in it and jumped out, and I have never screamed so freaking loud before in my entire life. Like, I'm pretty sure the entire mall heard me. I'm pretty sure I peed my pants. They have never gotten over it. Like, to this day, these girls still talk about it because we're still friendly, but they just thought it was hilarious. And for anybody who doesn't know me, I jump easily, and I get scared very easily. I could know you're standing behind me and I'll still jump if you like tap my shoulder. So it doesn't help when I had absolutely no idea. And when I'm at work, I try to maintain somewhat of a professional like persona, so I was not professional in that moment, like at all. I'm pretty sure there were some choice words. Couldn't tell you exactly, but I know that in that moment I have never been more fucking scared in my entire life, because my biggest fear is people jumping out and like trying to abduct me. One of my biggest fears. So, yeah. And then the place that I worked at before that, I was the assistant manager, and then I became the store manager, right? And this company is still around, so I'm not going to say anything about the company. It's nothing about the company. I worked in this building. There was very few of us. I think there was 5 of us. And I'm still friends with most of those girls. One of them was my maid of honor in our wedding.
Oh, okay.
And
hi.
What do you mean hi?
I was saying hi to her.
Yeah. I'm not sure if she's listening, but she knows who she is. Yes.
She better be listening.
There was this area in front of our cash rep that was always, empty, because that's, where people were to stand. And I would come in the next morning after closing down the store. So like there were times when I would close down the store and then open the next day. And I would close down the store, and I know exactly what the store fucking looked like. Like, I know, I closed it down, I cleaned it, I vacuumed it, I did it, and then I would come in and there would be like a stuffed animal or something sitting right in the middle of the floor, of like right when you walk in the door. So there's no way to miss it when you leave, and there's also no way to miss it when you come in, and there was always there. Now, the reason why I'm saying I'm not talking about what company this is because this company has video cameras just for visual use only. They don't actually work. They're just there to potentially scare off shoplifters. So it's not like I could ever watch video to be like, okay, is there a ghost, or is one of these girls coming in after I close and setting this shit up to like scare the living daylights out of me? I could never tell. It was so frustrating. But we were convinced there was a ghost in this store, because there were other times when things would happen and we were like, there was no explanation for it. So I, again, don't know if it was a ghost that was putting this stuffed animal right in the middle of the walkway, or if the girls who had, keys would come in after I left and strategically place things to scare the living daylights out of me.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That does sound like her, though.
Mm.
Did she ever tell you?
No, because she's convinced there was a ghost too.
Well, you can be convinced there was a ghost.
Well, and
but
she
still
wasn't the
fuck with
only
people.
person. There was other people there that had keys too.
Oh.
So it's possible it was other people.
Got it.
So do you have any other horror stories, fun stories, or anything for work?
Oh. So when I worked for an airline, I had a guy checking in for a flight, and he was an elite traveler, not the top tier of the frequent flyers, but like the base frequent flyer that gets some perks, but not all the perks.
Yeah.
He came up and he had 2 bags. And one of his bags was overweight. And I told him, I was like, hey, your bag's overweight by this much. You can move the weight into the other bag if you want. Or if you want, you can just pay the overweight fee. And he goes, no, I get 2 bags free. And I was like, you get 2 bags free, but there is a limit. And you are exceeding your limit.
The weight limit
on
yeah.
weight. Yeah. And he goes, it doesn't matter. Like, if I put the weight in another bag, it shouldn't matter. And I was like, I understand your point, but this is the rule. This is how we do things. And he just kept arguing with me. And so finally I was like, you know what? Fine. So I waived the bag fee, put the bag on the conveyor belt behind me, and he did not like how I handled his bag. And he's like, do you handle all the bags like that? And I was like, well, when they're that big, and as you can tell, I'm not that big. And he goes, well, you're not small. Yeah. And I was like, okay, have a great day.
Yeah.
Little did he know that we were in a small airport where your ticket counter agent is not just your ticket counter agent. They could be your gate agent. They could be the person loading the bags on the plane. They could be doing any number of things. Well, that particular day, I was loading bags. Well, we were told we had to remove X number of bags because they had to put on extra fuel for takeoff because it was really hot and it was in a high elevation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that happened that wasn't uncommon in our city. Mm-hmm. So when they told us this is how many bags you have to remove, I went looking for his. And I removed his.
Petty ass bitch. But you know what? Kudos.
Yes. Yeah. So
does that mean his bags went on a different flight?
Yeah, his bags just went later. But he didn't get the bags as soon as he arrived.
Bummer.
And that happens when you are a jackass to people.
Bummer.
That's part of why I don't complain to people in food service. They have control over stuff that I don't want them having control over, so I'm not going to give them a reason to fuck with my shit.
I have only ever gone full Karen on somebody, but I feel like in that moment it was 100% validated.
Okay.
You were there. It was when Mom passed.
Oh.
I had to. So for those of you who don't know, my mom passed and I had flown in on a one-way ticket to Seattle from where I was living because we didn't know how long I was going to be there. And it looked like she was going to be doing okay. Before she had passed, she had a stroke. So it looked like maybe she was going to be doing okay. So we had booked me a flight back. And then Mom had another stroke. And then that's when we had to have this big family discussion to take her off life support, blah, blah, blah. So we had to push my flight back. And when I had called to tell them, hey, I need to cancel it, not necessarily cancel it, but I got a voucher sort of thing. So I was like, I will rebook. I just don't know if it's today, tomorrow, the next day or whatever. And the person who canceled it was the sweetest person in the world, said she was really sorry, blah, blah, blah. I explained the situation. And then the day that we had to take my mom off of life support, I knew that I would be flying back in a couple of days. So I had Amy call the airline or the travel company, I forget who it was, and just say, hey.
It was the airline.
Yeah, and just say, hey, can you just rebook the flight And I don't even know, honestly, it was a big blur, what Amy said to me, but she pretty much brought the phone to me and said, they want to talk to you. And I got on the phone and I went full Karen.
I'd also like to preface this with they were trying to charge her for something that they didn't disclose
Correct.
when they postponed her flight.
And charge as in like $500-$600 extra charge, not like, I knew that there was going to be a rebooking fee. They had said that when I had canceled that there would be like a rebooking fee, but it was only going to be like $100 max, you know, give or take how far out I booked the flight, if it was going to be a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a couple of days, right? Like it could change what the rebooking fee was. And I was fine with that.
It wasn't going to change the rebooking fee. It was going to affect like, so let's say the flight that she originally booked was $250.
Right.
The rebooking fee is $100. If the next flight you choose is $500, you have to pay the
Right.
difference.
They wanted to have like a
But
rebooking fee of like $500 plus whatever the new flight was going to cost. And I was like, absolutely not.
So it was going to be like $1,000.
Yeah, and I went full Karen. And I was not in the waiting room when I took the phone, but I had her phone and Amy had taken my phone because I had all the information on my phone. And so Amy like texts me from my phone to her phone going, I need you to come out here, because I was in the room with Mom and she was out in the waiting room. And I don't know what you and Kari said, but I took the phone. And I think, didn't you say Kari said something like, I'd hate to be that person on the other end of the line?
I think so. Yeah.
And I went full Karen. But I didn't go full Karen. Like, I wasn't mean. I just said, I need to speak with your supervisor. That's the first thing I said right off the bat. Well, ma'am, this. And I said, no, I need to speak with your supervisor. Look, this is what's going on. I don't have time to go through, like, the ranks of let me talk to this person and then this person. Just get me to your supervisor so I can just get this done and taken care of. I'm taking my mom off life support. I do not have time to play this stupid game. I said, I've worked in retail and in customer service. I understand there's only so much you can do. So instead of us having this back and forth, give me to somebody who can.
Exactly.
And I was very, very matter of fact about it. I wasn't rude. I wasn't like, oh, thank you so much. I was just like, just give it me. I know that this is beyond you. I'm not trying to say anything bad. I'm not talking bad about you. Just give me to somebody who can. And this lady was like, ma'am, you're acting entitled. And that's when I went off. I was like, I'm not acting entitled. I'm pulling my mom off life support. And you're sitting here asking me to jump through all these hoops that at the end of the day, I know you can't approve anything anyways. It's gonna have to go to your supervisor. I'm not stupid. I know how this works. Get me your supervisor. And then she started saying something like, well, if you're going to continue to talk to me like this. And I said, I am not talking to you anyway, other than saying, I want to speak to your supervisor. I have not called you names. I did not degrade you. I said, let me speak with your supervisor.
And she did not use swear words?
Nope.
Like, at no point because again, Ginny had worked in customer service and everything her whole life. Yeah. So she knows you don't talk to people certain ways.
No, I use my mom voice.
If you
I was very, very stern. I
exactly.
was like, look, this is the situation. I know that this is something you can't help me with. So instead of wasting both of our times, get me to somebody who can. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I probably could have used a nicer voice, but I also explained the situation to the lady. Look, I am holding my mom's hand. We just took her off of life support. She's dying. I don't have time to sit here and chit chat about the sky or whatever. Just get me on the phone with somebody who can help me, you know? And that's the only time I've ever gone full Karen. Like I said, I didn't raise my voice. I went mom voice, very stern. I did not curse. I did not call anybody names. It was just like, we're not doing this. That's the only time I've ever been like, no, we're not doing this, like, at all. Because you're right. I have been in customer service, and don't get me wrong, sometimes people come in and they have every right to be frustrated, but I'm also smart enough to know that some positions literally their hands are tied. There's only so much they can do. Yeah. So I don't want to yell at somebody or raise my voice to somebody who, is just doing their job.
Or like you said, you don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your time. You know they can't do anything. So let's just cut the shit
Right.
and get me to somebody who I know
Right.
can
And
actually
like I know that there's steps
that
that have
call.
to be taken and I understand that these customer service people, they have to do certain things before they can eventually send it off to their supervisor. I get that. I understand that. But that's the conversation I had with her at the very beginning. Look, I understand that this is the situation, but look, I'm holding my dead mom's hands. I don't have time to deal with all that extra stuff. So can we just just escalate it, like I understand that there's times and places where there's certain de-escalation things that the customer service reps need to go through. That was not the time or place,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that just wasn't the time or place. And I wasn't rude about it. I was just very matter of fact, like, this is just how it is, and I even told her I've worked in customer service. This isn't anything. This is nothing against you. I am not mad at you. This is just, until she said I was being entitled. That's when I kind of went, no, we're done talking. Get me your supervisor. I don't care what sort of de-escalation process. You do not tell me I'm acting entitled when I'm asking you to tell me where in the recorded conversation that we had 3 days prior that you said that this was going to be my fee, because it was a recorded conversation. I had the name of the person who I'd spoke to. I had the time, the date, and all that stuff. You can pull up that recorded conversation.
And also all of the notes. Anytime someone calls an airline, which, by the way, I've worked also at the call center because I worked at a small airport where we didn't have enough flights to justify full-time people. So they gave us call center duties between flights to fill our time. So I've done that too. And in any time you have something like that, you make notes in a passenger's record and say, here's what we discussed. Here's what I gave them. Here's what I told them. Here's what they said.
And it's recorded.
There's that too.
Yeah. And that's what I told her. I said, this is who I spoke to. This is the time and the date that I spoke to. This is what she said. Now, if I misunderstood, that's fine. But let's pull up that recording and listen to it and tell me where you say in that conversation. And the lady who, quote unquote, canceled my flight or postponed it was the sweetest, nicest person in the world. I explained to her the situation saying, hey, I still have to fly home. It's just, we thought my mom was doing okay, and then she had a second stroke, and now we have to have a family conversation, so I just need to postpone. And she was very, very wonderful. She did make it very clear there would be a rebooking fee, but it was $100. And like I said, then they wanted to go up to like $1,000, and it was like, that's absolutely not.
10 times what was originally agreed on
in a 72-hour period.
Exactly.
Like, there's no way.
Exactly.
Like, there's no way. Like, so anyways, that's the only time I've ever gone full Karen. Have you ever gone Karen on someone?
I don't think I have. And if I have, it was not a full Karen and therefore didn't stick in my mind. Now, my husband, on the other hand, he has gone. What's the male version of Karen? Josh? Oh, Kyle. My husband has gone a full
or
Kyle
Chad,
on people.
I think is the other one.
I think Chad is the current, like this generation's.
And that doesn't surprise me. I could see him going off on somebody.
And especially, like, if he feels someone is being rude to me or is upsetting me for no reason, or, like, he does not feel something is warranted, it's because of his protection instincts. Like, he goes, like, ape shit and will be like, no, you're not going to talk to my wife like that. And
that's one of my favorite things about not being on the front end of retail anymore, is that if I'm in line and I'm standing behind somebody who is going off on somebody or is being rude or disrespectful, I can't get fired now for saying something because I'm not behind the register. So I will be that bitch that is going to call out the Karen in that moment and be like, take your little crunchy ass home. When you have a better attitude, it's not her fault. Like, I will stand up for them. I will make backhanded comments. A couple of years, or was it 2 years ago? And I think it was around the time when, like, the new election process was coming up. I don't remember, but there was, and I don't even remember if it was Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton on the cover of a magazine. I don't remember what it was, but we were at a grocery store and it was on a Sunday. And this middle-aged man was there with his aging mother. And he was running his fucking mouth at the cashier that this magazine was there, and he didn't want to see her face, and blah 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 blah. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ! This little 18-year-old standing behind the desk, she has no say over what freaking magazines are sitting at the freaking checkout line. If you have a problem with it, don't look at it, right? So I was so tired of it, so fucking tired of this guy. Just like, again, your own political feelings or your own, like, you are entitled to those feelings. If you want to support these people or not support these people, fine. But you don't need to sit there and run your mouth to an 18-year-old who has no say over what magazines are sitting there. So I grabbed the magazines and I was like, I'll buy it if it's going to bother you that much so you don't have to fucking look at it. Like, I said it. And he was like, what? You're going to waste your fucking money. Nobody wants to buy that anyway. And I goes, well, clearly people did want to buy it because this is the only copy left. And then he like ran his mouth and I was like, you need Jesus. It is Sunday. You are here with your freaking 80-year-old mom and you're running your mouth to an 18-year-old. Go. Like, just leave. Just leave. Like, I ended up not buying it because after he walked away, I put it away. I didn't need the magazine, but I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, but I now get to be that person that can call people out on it. And then I apologized to the, like, because the girl was like, I don't even know what happened. Like, her manager ended up coming over after the guy, like, she kind of stood there because the guy was yelling at me at that point, not her. And I was like, you can yell at me all you want. Like, you're not hurting my feelings. Like, I'm not getting paid to ring up your groceries. Like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And then I was like, Jesus Christ, this is Jesus's day. And I'm not even a religious person, but Jesus Christ, this is Jesus's day. We're not doing this on Sunday. Go to church.
Yeah.
Go get right
Where
with
you
your
be.
maker, whoever it is. Like,
That's actually really funny.
oh my God.
I feel like you told me about that too. Like, because
I'm sure I
that
probably
sounds
did.
familiar. Like,
because I was so frustrated because I was like, Jesus Christ, like this little poor girl, she's working on a Sunday morning. Nobody wants to work on a Sunday morning.
yeah.
And this newer generation is just like so, they're very, they believe what they believe,
Mm-hmm.
but they also seem very, with this new election cycle, they don't seem as confrontational about it. Like, they're just solid in their belief, and I don't feel like they need to like run their mouth about it. Whereas, sadly, a lot of our generation and our generation, unfortunately, spans like the 30 to 50 range. The older end of our generation, for some reason, just can't keep their mouth shut, and they just have to tell everybody about their political beliefs and oh, this and that. And it's like, that is awesome that you feel that way, but keep your mouth shut. Like, when did it become necessary?
When did anyone ask you?
Right. And I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying that, like, you believe what you believe. That's great. If you want to have those sorts of conversations with people that are your friends or your family, that's great. But when you're in public and you don't know these people, it is not necessary to...
On top of the fact that I've also noticed, like, okay, so back when I was 14, I did Civil War reenacting. And I would stay up all night with a couple of the other kids that were in this Civil War reenacting group. And we would discuss politics and religion and everything that people say you shouldn't discuss because it's very divisive. We somehow had very differing opinions and were somehow very respectful about how we spoke about it. And having a discussion doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful. And I think that that's something that people have forgotten. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean that you have to yell at somebody.
Right. And again, it's not just religion and politics. It's anything. It's
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, shoot, I went to dinner with some friends last weekend and the guy was like, a guy that I hadn't met yet, and they're from Tonga. And I was like, oh, that's, I thought they were Samoan or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm from the Seattle area. And he's like, oh, we can't eat dinner here. And he was like joking. And I was like, they're from the Sacramento area now. And they're 49ers fans. And anybody who knows that if you're a Seahawks fan, you will never root for the 49ers. And the 49ers will never root for the Seahawks. Like, it does not matter. I would rather see somebody in the AFC win the Super Bowl than ever see the 49ers hold the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, the Lombardi Trophy. Like, I'm sorry. That's it. Like, period. End of story. Now, if it's a Cardinal or if it's the Rams, I will be okay. I will root for them against anybody else because I want to keep it in the NFC. I don't give a shit about 49ers. Nope. We still were joking around and laughing, but it is a legitimate rivalry. Like, but we still joked and laughed and haha. Like, clearly he's never going to be a Seahawks fan and I will never be a 49ers fan. And we had to educate some people at the table who are not football fans that it is a staunch, hard line. Like,
absolutely.
Not in a mean way.
No joke. I asked one of my coworkers who's a Dallas Cowboys fan. I was like, so I'm assuming you're rooting for the Chiefs in the game. And he goes, no, I'm rooting for the Eagles. And I'm like, how? You're the same division. They beat you. You're okay with them winning? Because apparently that's that divisive line like the Seahawks and the Niners
Mhm.
is that way with the Cowboys and I believe the Commanders.
I don't know. I don't know how the NFC, because are they the NFC South?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how that works. I just know that in our division, our biggest rival is the 49ers, and then my husband's division, their biggest rival is the Raiders.
Which is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're-
But yeah, we are rooting for your husband's team tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Even though they're
I mean,
AFC.
If it was anybody else in the NFC playing and it wasn't against the Chiefs, then I would root for the NFC just because we want to keep it in the NFC. But because my husband's a Chiefs fan, these are the times when I will, root for the Chiefs.
And also, the NFC won the Pro Bowl last weekend, so I'm okay.
I did not watch that.
It was actually okay. So apparently, they used to do it very differently.
Mhm.
And this year they had like a bunch of like little games like dodgeball and like the kick or the kick competition, kick-tac-toe.
It used to be like a legitimate game, but then people were getting hurt, and some people were going to the Pro Bowl that were in the Super Bowl, and so like they'd have to opt out.
Yeah, now they're not allowed to go to the Pro Bowl if they're in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Which is kind of weird that they put the Pro Bowl the week like between. Why not?
You'd think you'd want to do it after. Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently that's how it used to be.
I don't know. I just know that the Pro Bowl now is, but the Pro Bowl is usually, it's everybody else from other teams, and it used to be like a real game, and now it's just they kind of do it for fun. It's just more of a happy-go-lucky sort of.
This year
thing.
they did like flag football, and then like I said, kick-tac-toe, where like the kickers had to kick a 3 in a row. That was fun. That was fun to watch, and then like this catch competition where like they had to jump on a trampoline and jump into the air and catch a ball from somebody, and Snoop Dogg, Pete Davidson, and an actual footballer.
I love how she doesn't know the footballer's name.
I don't. I do know that coaching the AFC and the NFC were the Manning brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, that was fun.
Who coached for the NFC?
Eli.
Okay. And the AFC would be
Peyton.
Good job.
and then they have an older brother named Cooper.
Mm-hmm. And their dad used to be a football player.
Yes, and apparently though Cooper is the better athlete, but he couldn't play in the NFL because of a something like he didn't pass the physical or something like that. Like they found something wrong with him, so they wouldn't allow him to play in the NFL. But apparently all of the brothers have agreed that Cooper's the better sports.
It's so funny because Amy last week was like, have you listened to the Kelsey's Brother podcast? And I was like, no, I haven't listened to it yet. It's on my list of podcasts to listen to. I just have so many podcasts that I'm trying to catch up on that I'm not trying to start a new one. And she's like, oh, I'm going to check it out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not kidding you. Maybe 10 minutes later, she's like, yeah, not for me. She's like, definitely for you, but there's a lot of football stuff. I don't know what they're talking about. So you might enjoy it.
No joke. Like
she got 10 minutes into that podcast. She's like, nope, I'm out.
I didn't understand what they were talking about. They were talking about like returns and stats, and I have no fucking clue what they're talking about. I'm not a sports person. But there are episodes that they released between after they won the AFC and the NFC championship. So the last 2 weeks, they've been kind of fun. Last week's episode, they talked to their mom and their dad.
Yeah. About how they met and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you feed NFL children? Just stuff like that. That was fun for me. I could listen to that. But if you're talking about statistics and shit like that, I'm sorry. I don't understand.
You can definitely tell which one of us is the football fan and which one is not.
I am not into any sports though. I played soccer in high school and then I broke my leg. And see how far that got me.
See, and I'm not a sports person in the sense that I don't play sports, but I genuinely love football. I grew up watching it. Obviously, the Seahawks were on every Sunday or whatever. And nothing against my family, but growing up, it seemed as though some of the uncles or boy cousins didn't want to spend time answering questions, about football because you just know. And so it really bothered me that when I watched the games, I didn't understand what they were talking about, or, the game was interesting and fun, but I didn't understand. So I made it a point to kind of teach myself. So there's still a lot that I don't know and that I'm still learning. But then having boys and then them playing football themselves, you get immersed into it. And then, we watch it. It's on TV in our house during the football season, every Sunday, Monday, Thursday. And then Saturday, we obviously have college football. And then one of our boys plays football. But he lives, further away. So they stream their games online. So we'll put that on the TV. And you don't have any sound, but you can still watch it. So you can still see them playing. So football is on during the football season, probably 75% of the time. In our house.
In my house during the winter, which is perfect timing for football to be on because my husband can't do as much in the winter with it being cold.
Yeah.
Constantly. All day Sunday. Like, he's obsessed with football. He has his teams, but he watches every fucking game.
So do we.
Game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's always on. It's always on, even if it's not our teams.
Last year, he would reward me if I would watch football with him on Sundays. If I watched football with him on Sundays, he's like, okay, now go buy yourself a good coffee on Monday morning. So that was my incentive.
Husband, if you're listening to this, I watch football all the time. And I don't bitch. So what do I get?
You get the satisfaction of watching football because you like it.
Well,
you only
yeah.
get rewarded if you're doing something you don't want to do. Duh.
I don't mind it being on because Sundays are it's just something that I can have on in the background. I can listen to it. I don't necessarily have to see something. I can hear it and understand what's going on, and I can be playing on my phone or doing some research for podcasts. Or like I said, we're looking at new cars lately, so I've been doing that, comparing vehicles, but I can still have football on in the background. But I genuinely, depending on the team who's playing, I will pay more attention to or less attention to. Obviously,
yeah.
Unfortunately for me, 99% of the games the Seahawks play are not televised here, and we don't have cable. And I don't pay extra for the NFL package. I should, but unfortunately, I work some Sundays. My husband works every other weekend, so it's kind of why spend that extra money when, at least 2 weekends out of the month, neither one, or he's not here to watch football,
We are legit canceling cable as soon as the Super Bowl's over.
Yeah.
And then when football season comes back around, we are doing, I guess YouTube is getting a contract with the NFL.
Yeah, YouTube TV. Yeah.
So we're going, during the football season, we are going to probably pay for that so that he can watch whatever game.
See, and I would get the NFL package if we had cable, but you can't just buy a package without the cable. So it's pointless.
Yeah.
And we had Paramount, but you can have Paramount Plus, but to watch football games, you had to get the upgraded. So the Paramount Plus basic package, the $4.99 or whatever, doesn't have football. But if you want to watch the football, you got to pay the $10 a month. Well, the only reason why we have it is for football. You know what I mean? So I'm not paying $10 a month to watch Sundays.
Yeah.
Games on Sundays, so it was just stupid. We could go and watch it anywhere else,
Yeah. Totally.
So
totally
we just don't. We were talking about jobs, and now here we are talking about football. But it is reminiscent. I mean, it's Super Bowls tomorrow, so
yeah. I mean, this episode will definitely air well after the game is over. What is your prediction? Who, realistically, who do you think is going to win?
Honestly, to tell you the truth, I have not watched enough of the Eagles games this year to know how they play, to know how well their offensive and defensive lines work. Now, clearly they made it to the Super Bowl, so they're good.
And especially since all of the teams in the NFC South made it to the playoffs.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I only really pay attention to...
Was it the Commanders? I think, yeah, because the Commanders were in the playoffs, so were the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And the Giants, I believe, are the only ones that didn't make it.
I like I said, I haven't watched enough of their games. Now tomorrow, there's all that pregame coverage, so I will probably see a lot of the highlights from both teams throughout the season, so I can kind of get a better idea. Obviously, I'm rooting for the Chiefs. It's my husband's team and my backup team when my team doesn't make it. But obviously, I want the Chiefs to win. what I know from the Chiefs, they could win, but I do think they have quite a few hurt players. I know they've had a couple of weeks off, so maybe those players are back on. But I don't know enough about the Eagles and like their, injured reserve and who's on the bench and who's not. I will be doing a lot of research in the next 24 hours. I like to watch all that pregame coverage just because I do like to watch. I'm not a fan of the news where you have like, money analysts or whatever, but the sports analysts talking about, because they're most of them are previous football players, so they can kind of see it from a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm gonna say it's not going to be a very big point difference. I do think it's going to be a somewhat high scoring game, just because I know how the Chiefs play. But I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any sense of the word. But just based off of what I have seen, I think it's going to be a close, higher scoring. And by higher, I mean 30s, 40s. Not like, what was
70.
it, that one a couple years ago where it was 3-6 or whatever, that the Rams, like, that was like the worst Super Bowl ever, where the Rams won. It was like 3-10 or I don't know. It was really bad.
Oh, so I don't know.
It was like the one year I was sick.
I don't remember one football season from the next. The only Super Bowl I specifically remember was it was either my junior or senior year. It was the Tennessee Titans versus the Rams when they were still in St. Louis. That was the year that NSYNC was doing the halftime show. And Marlena and I got together, and we, like, the church that she went to, the youth group was having like a Super Bowl party. So we went there so that we could watch it, so that we could watch the halftime show. And I couldn't tell you who won that game. We were rooting for the Tennessee Titans because that's who Justin was rooting for. And in turn, that's who the rest of the guys were rooting for. That's the extent
Super
of what I
Bowl
remember.
that I remember like vividly like watching and like caring about who won was the Steelers Seahawks back in, what was it, 04, 05?
5.
Because prior to that, like, I liked football, but my husband at the time wasn't a super huge football fan, so it just wasn't something, like, I liked football, but it was never like a big thing. And then as I've progressed away from that relationship into this relationship and stuff, like, football is obviously, something that was what we watched more, so I got to be around it more, so I can understand it more and learn it, and not just learn it, but just like understand some of the verbiage. Like, I heard it, but self-taught. It's not like I played it or anything. But now it's like a holiday every year in our house.
So I was in pep band in high school.
Uh-huh.
So I had to go to all the football games.
Yeah.
And basketball games, and we played. But what I thought I taught myself that was correct, I have come to find out that that's not true. I taught myself something wrong. Specifically, offset penalties. Mm-hmm. Wait, no, I'm sorry, not offset penalties. Penalty declined, I thought was an offset penalty.
Oh.
And I still don't fully understand why you would decline a penalty. Like, what?
Because,
like, it doesn't make sense.
If you accept a penalty, depending on what sort of penalty it is, and depending on what sort of like yardage you would gain, you benefit more from keeping the spot of the ball than taking the penalty. Like, you can decline the penalty and keep.
But can anybody decline a penalty, or is it only the non-penalty team?
So you call the penalty. Like, let's say the Chiefs have a penalty, then the refs go to the Eagles coach and says, this is the penalty, this is what would happen, and they can choose to accept it or decline it. You don't get to ask the Chiefs coach, because the Chiefs, they're the ones that committed
the penalty. So they don't get to choose. It's up to the other team based off of the type of placement on the field, the type of penalty, what sort of yardage you would win or lose or whatever. Not very often would you decline a penalty. You would only decline it if you would, like, sometimes where the spot of the foul is a better, or where the spot of the penalty is where the better placement of the ball is, where if you take the penalty, it would actually bring it back a little, or you would gain a down because you could replay the down, and you don't want, you know what I mean? Like, there's just sometimes where the ball is in that moment is better than what sort of consequence would come from the penalty. And I guess I've never understood. I guess I've never been paying attention to when a penalty is declined to know why it's better to decline it.
So in that moment, yeah, that's why you would, I've asked Roger that sometimes too, because it's hard to remember all the different types of penalties and like how many yards are gained based on certain, or if you replay a down or whatever. There's a lot of them, and I don't remember them all. So there's a lot of the times where I'll be like, why would they have declined that? To me, it would seem like you would have gained more, but there's other things going on. So that's still something I learn, because one, they don't decline penalties often, and when they do, it's every situation is slightly different. I don't think there's a black and white.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things. So the one thing about football that I understand, but I understand it, but I don't get it sometimes. And I have had so many people argue with me about this, especially men, because for some strange reason, they don't understand that a female can know football. But I understand the need for a pass interference penalty. I get it. You can't just
But isn't that the point of the defense?
The whole point is to keep the other team from getting the fucking football. So, like, I understand you can't, like, reach down and, like, pull their arms away. Like, you can't do that. It has to be, like, a valid block. Like, that's one of the pass interferences that I get it. Like, you can't yank on their arms, or, if it's a catchable play, you have to try to catch it without, touching them, sort of thing. I get it. I understand it. And there are some times where it's a very obvious pass interference. I think there's a lot of times where pass interference is a very gray area, and I've seen it called and I went, that's just good football. Like, I get it. I understand it. I'm not saying there shouldn't be a reason for a pass interference penalty. I just feel like there's a lot of pass interferences that don't get called, and I get it. There's only so many refs on the team and they can't see everything. But I also feel like there's a lot of times where it's called and it's 100% not necessary. Because wasn't there there was a game that happened, I think 3-4 years ago, that changed the rules for pass interferences because there was a penalty called. I want to say it had something to do with the Saints, where it was like they're reviewable now or something, and they weren't reviewable. I don't remember, but I know that there was a big upheaval and people were upset about a certain play and the way it was called, and it changed the rules.
Gotcha. Yeah,
it's just frustrating. Like, I get it, but I don't.
I didn't understand when they took away the touchdown dances.
Oh yeah.
To me, that's the best part. Like, I'm sorry, like, that's not unsportsmanlike conduct. That's like, yeah, I got this. Like, that's cool. Like, you should be able to be happy that you did something good. Like,
right.
I don't know.
Right.
But that's just me. Anyways.
I think that's going to be our topic for today, guys. We really were starting about work, but then it went off to football. And I feel like that's a great place to end on the eve of Super Bowl Sunday.
For recording, at least.
So here's one more thing. Let's ask this. Or do you have a theme for this and that?
Well, that's going to be our next episode.
I know, but I was going to ask you a question. But if you have a theme, I don't
have a theme.
Okay. So my question then is, what is your favorite Super Bowl food?
It changes, but mostly the thing that I have been asked to make sure is available is stuffed mushrooms. I make this amazing stuffed mushrooms that's got like sausage and cream cheese and Asiago and...
You've never made those for me. I feel like you came down here for a whole week before my wedding and you did not cook for me. No, you did. You made macaroni and cheese. I take that back. I was going to say you didn't cook for me once, but you did make macaroni and cheese.
Which the boys thought that was actually decent. And I'm like,
and she cooked dinner because the week of our wedding, I had to do a parent football meeting at night. And I had to be there for like 2 hours, and it was like from 5 to 7. And I was like, I don't have time to cook dinner. And Amy's like, I got it. So she made macaroni and cheese.
That was actually me and your husband. Your husband grilled the chicken, and I made the mac and cheese.
Homemade mac and cheese. The boys loved it. They ate it like it was
But it was the worst mac and cheese I've made in a long time.
It wasn't bad. It just was a little bit drier, and it didn't have as much cheese as yours normally does. But it was still good. The flavor was good. It's just...
The pan I was making it in was a little smaller than I'm used to. So I was like trying to stay within that without like spilling all over your counter.
Yeah.
So
I remember that.
Yeah.
My favorite is chicken wings. I love, again, talked about this in a previous episode, the Cajun dry rub wings at the Chicken Coop here in town. I need to figure out how to make those at home. because it's just so good. And I know they're full of calories and there's hardly any meat and it's a lot of work, but you got to do the bone in. They have to be the wings. They can't be the little drummies. Oh,
Okay.
I just love it.
Maybe I'll start looking for a recipe for that Cajun dry rub to send you, and then
I mean, I'm sure
you could
there's
try
some
it.
on there. I just have never taken the time to do it, but I have noticed that I prefer more of a dry rub on wings because I like them to be crispy, and I feel like you can make them crispy, but the second you put a sauce on them, if you don't eat them very quickly, they start to get a little soggy, and I like the crispiness. Like,
Yeah.
even when I was younger, I preferred extra crispy chicken when we did fried chicken.
Yeah. I
So
get that.
for me, I prefer a dry rub. Or like I do this honeybee one where it's like honey and sweet, and if you bake it, it gets crispy, but it's like a sticky crispy.
Ooh,
So they're
interesting.
very good. It's kind of like I would compare it to like an Asian zing type sauce where it's like a stickier one. So the more you bake it, the like it almost like it's like when
Caramelizes.
yes, caramelizes, but it becomes crunchy caramel. It's so
Mhm.
good. But
Interesting.
otherwise, I don't like the ones dripping and stuff because I feel like they just get soggy.
That makes sense. I get that.
So I'd love to crisp them up and then like toss them in some dry rub and then like throw them under the broiler for a second just to like sear it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Seal in that dry rub.
That flavor. Okay, so that really is it.
All right. Just a reminder, guys, email us, Ginny and Amy podcast at gmail.com. That's GINNYANDAMY podcast at gmail.com.
You can also find us at Bitching Siblings Podcast on Instagram. Lots of pictures, posts, send us messages, all the things.
All right. That's it for us tonight, guys. Have a great night.
Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I know it's going to be late by the time you all hear this. Hopefully you had lots to drink, your team won, and you got lots of good food.
Bye, guys.